So somebody asked me on Instagram that they would love to see the people in my clothes and the reversal of the role, but the conceptual foundation of this project was more around looking at 50 people that we use in our everyday, and we don't see them. The project has a lot to do with looking. It has a lot to do with the gaze, the authority of the gaze, and also the authority of the photographic gaze, and how much of the photographer you can actually generally see in a photograph. I spent a year traveling around the country, around South Africa, finding people who were willing to invert roles with me. And what I would do is I would go into the environment. I mean, not touch the print. I would go into the environment. I would set up the shot, and I would take a photograph of this person standing in the environment. Then, while I was photographing the person, I would read their body language, and I would mimic their body language. I used a Metz, a 6x7, a Metz to light the shots. So it was a handheld Metz. That Metz I actually used to make another body of work a couple of years later. But I shot with Pentax 6.7 with 120 roll film, and I hand processed the color negs, and these are all hand printed photographs. The scale is 50 by 60. For continuity, I decided to set the shot up onto a tripod and crop the environment. I think I used a 50mm lens, if I remember correctly. I actually can't remember. I traveled all over the country. I think this is somewhere in the Eastern Cape. This was a cobbler. I went into Checkers, Shelf Packers. I suppose you do see a cashier. I suppose the project goes a little wider there. I think sometimes, like, when you're making work, I often find that, like, I'll start on a conceptual basis and then the work will evolve around itself. And, sometimes I personally feel that I have to let go of some of my really quite binding conceptual starting points. But yeah, this is the amazing person who cleans our water. This is the sort of toilet filtration plant. A paper mill in Johannesburg for the newspapers. Newspaper packer. I remember this day. I was in Joburg for a couple of weeks, and it took me a long time to get access to this place, and the Metz wasn't working. The Metz is the handheld flash. And I remember promising the camera and the flash that if it worked once, just once for this shot, I would stop smoking. And I did. It worked once, and I did. I stopped smoking to thank the spirit of the Metz for working for me. This is at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan Museum in the Eastern Cape in PE. It's the chief curator. And what was pretty phenomenal about this work was how generous everybody was. It was quite a bizarre request to go onto a farm in the Eastern Cape, onto a dairy farm, and say to a farmer, can I please get into the clothes and change the role of this person, working with the dairy cows, and they can wear my clothes, which, by the way, were elasticated pants and like a loose sweater, and I can get into their clothes. And I was struggling to articulate it and explain it, and over-apologizing initially. And it was actually one of the sitters who I was trying to sort of stammer around explaining what I'm going to do, and they said, "Oh, you mean you want to do a role reversal? You want to swap roles?" And that's where the title of the project came from a very kind gentleman who put the words in my mouth that I was looking for.
What did you get out of this experience?
Sure. I got to travel the country, some of the country. I got to go into environments I'd always been curious of going into. This is the back of the ETV studios. I got to really look at people. I got given a free ticket to read people and read their body language and connect with them. And I realized that portrait photography is quite an intimate experience, and something incredible happens in that moment. It's a deeply intimate moment where somebody is standing in front of you and you have this power over them to depict them in a way that you see them or you wish to depict them. And it became a very intimate but also very political experience for me in terms of the politics of looking. I know that I am a specific gender and a specific race and a specific size, and I look the way that I look, and I can't ever get away from that in any of these photographs. So the project inherently became political. It became about gender and race. But there was something incredible around humanity and around experiencing how people spend their days. And incredibly generous people. They took me into their environment. This is at the electricity plant. And walked me around their working environment. Was extremely generous and showed me how things work. I don't think I could get away with this nowadays. This is in the baggage conveyor belt area in the back of an airport. I think the time then was just, as I shared before, it was shot in 2006. So 17, 18 years ago now. And I got right into the underbelly of the airport. It was like back in the day when you used to be able to go into the cockpit and you could go see the pilot working. This guy, his name is Jacob. I will never forget this man. He's a truck washer, was a truck washer in PE. And he was an incredibly dashing, beautiful man, and very kind. Jacob. If you want to hear the voiceovers from this the project, what I would do is I would photograph the shot. I would photograph the sitter, the person in their environment. Then I would read their body language. We would swap over clothes and in like a back room or just randomly, like whatever, put the clothes on. I got really good at stripping without showing any of my body. And then what I would do after that, then we'd invert roles. They would take my photograph and then or press the button, hold the mets. I would show them how to do that, and then I would interview them and record their biography, autobiography, just saying who they are. I have to share that there was one shot that I felt the most vulnerable, and most of the time I trained as a photographer in the press. I used to work was a young apprentice photographer at the Associated Press, so I had a really good way of neutralizing myself when I was working. I used to often find myself in some environments where the safest, most instinctive thing for me was to asexualize myself, was to neutralize myself, my body, because sometimes I would find myself either surrounded by a very masculine presence, or it would just be safer for me to neutralize myself. And I think that came in handy in this project because I was just somebody coming into the environment, changing clothes. It didn't have any kind of sexual or arousal nature to it, except for the one day when I realized I'm trying to find it. Hopefully I find it while we're still filming. Perhaps I'll share it on as a snapshot a bit later on the stories. But I was in the harbour on the long line fishing trawlers, and I was changing into the outfit of a fisherman, and I was on the boat, and I looked around and I realized I was the only female in the whole area, in the whole place, and I started to strip, and I was stripping kind of in underneath myself and into the clothes like this, and I realized that my dog's just having some lunch, and I realized that there were like about 7 or 8 fishermen leaning down, looking at me, and I suddenly became quite conscious of the fact that I was female in a female body, and I was being gazed at with a different kind of look, a more activated look. Now we're going into the back prints. Yeah. All of these prints are, you'll see that they are, they're hand color prints. They were gelatine negatives, 120 roll film negatives, and they were all printed by me by hand on this Fuji Crystal Archive paper at the Grahamstown Makanda Rhodes University Photography Department, which was one of the last color machines that I knew of, but I do know that I think it's Cape Film Supply have just recently invested in a color printing, color darkroom, so color enlargers and a machine. And I'll be interviewing Christian Bears for Studio Confidential, and he'll speak a little bit more about that. But you can see here that I didn't focus the lens there. I don't know why I did that while I was speaking about being looked at.